advise to, because you'll have translation in Romanian, English, and Ukrainian, because in the second panel we'll have a Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine and he will speak in Ukrainian. I advise to have translation, please use it. And first channel is in Romanian, second in English, and third it's in Ukrainian. And we'll start in a few minutes. Ok, hai, gata, s-a conectat? Ok, bun, gata.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ionel. I'm the president of the New Strategy Center, and I will speak in Romanian. For Romanian, please, one.
Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, state secretaries, members of the diplomatic corps, representatives of the academia, members of parliament, representatives of other non-government organizations, thank you for your presence here with us in person and through VTC at this very important event that brings together for 2 days here in Sinaia over 90 speakers from 10 countries, where we will try to approach and cut and slice each side of the topic that we've seen, that is the reconstruction of Ukraine, turning it in as many layers and breakdowns as possible. Everyone is speaking today of the reconstruction of Ukraine since the conflict started, and it actually takes place as we speak today. It was only natural that New Strategy Center try to or tackle this event. For us, it's not the first event. It's the most important, however, that we've organized with the help of Mr. NIŽ, whom I say hello to and thank for hospitality. In absolutely special conditions at Alexandrian Experience in Sinaia, at the foot of the Bujej Mountains, one of the most beautiful resorts in Romania. The forum of these 2 days is under the patronage of the government of Romania, and we also get the support of the Ukrainian government. The two prime ministers could not be present in person today, but we have pre-recorded messages. It's only natural. We have today in Romania discussions to adopt a budget by the end of the year. The conference brings together officials from Romania, Ukraine, and other member states of EU and NATO, as I said, experts and representatives of the business environment, because as we've gotten you used to this, New Strategy Center is always trying to bring the 4 dimensions at the same table: the government, the non-government, the academia, and the business environments. Today's event is also important because today's topic is also very important. Very many analysts speak of the largest percentage of the process of reconstruction of Ukraine compared to the Marshall Plan after the Second World War. As you know, the amounts vary from 350 million, 400 billion, says the speaker, or so, the latest assessment of the World Bank. And the funding that will also be discussed today separately is a separate topic per se, because it's going to be topic of private investment, states guaranteed aids from other countries, and maybe resources of Ukraine, as few or much as they are. We don't speak only of the physical reconstruction process of Ukraine that we have to admit has been damaged unimaginably 3 years ago, but we also speak of the security arrangements post-conflict. We also speak of the process of Ukraine's alignment to the EU standards. Funding for the reconstruction of Ukraine will be a chapter that Romania takes seriously as well, and I salute the presence in the room of Exim Bank and Czech representatives. For now, the World Bank has allocated $38 billion as direct funding. Other funding will follow. I'm not referring here to the military ones. I'm speaking strictly of reconstruction. A topic that maybe will be tackled, maybe not, is on funding by valuing the assets, the Russian frozen assets abroad, because from what I've noticed, there is no clear international mechanism to use that money in the reconstruction process. Of course, we organized this debate in Romania, and we are interested in how Romania can be a regional hub in the reconstruction process of Ukraine, given proximity to southern Ukraine and the seaside. And Romania has capacities on various levels: economic, security, and proper experience, a recent experience of the EU accession, and can help Ukraine in this respect. Romania can contribute specifically, and these topics will be debated in the 18 panels for the reconstruction of Ukraine, strengthening the Ukrainian infrastructure, Moldova included, also strengthening the capacity to accession to the EU, and restoring the civil, energy, military infrastructures and distribution chains that were damaged in this conflict. Another topic will relate to the security collaterals for the Ukraine after the conflict. And we also have the panel to EU, NATO, and US presence in the Black Sea, and the cybersecurity and infrastructure, critical infrastructure. Having said this, I can only bid you, well, all the best for the debate. We will network as much as we can with our guests. We appreciate their effort of being here, so do take advantage of their presence and speak with them. Now, allow me to welcome the pre-recorded messages of His Excellency Prime Minister of Romania, Marcel CIOLACU. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, I am honored to bid you welcome to the conference dedicated for the reconstruction of Ukraine and the strategic role that Romania plays. This event strengthens and develops practically what we agreed upon in the dialogue and bilateral cooperation of Romania and Ukraine agreed upon lately. The relations between Romania and Ukraine will shortly reach a true strategic partnership. An essential component of the partnership will be the logistical hub that we will organize in Romania for the reconstruction and assistance to Ukraine. We have before us a major challenge from the illegal and unprovoked invasion by Russia to Ukraine. This is a direct threat to the security and stability of the Black Sea, with negative impact felt at global level when we speak of food security in the most vulnerable countries, or of energy security, that is. The continuous attacks of the Russian forces in Ukraine confirm, in fact, the Russian frustration to the EU Europe solidarity of the Euro-Atlantic community and of the democracies all throughout the world for Ukraine. The conference in Sinaia strengthens the strategic role that Romania has to support Ukraine and to reconstruct this country. I stress that Romania will continue to promote, to foster measures of the Euro-Atlantic community for the resilience of Ukraine and reconstruction of this country within the process of European accession. Europe cannot afford for Ukraine to lose. We believe in Ukraine's victory, being aware of the fact that we need more effort and help from international partners. In the visit that I've taken at the beginning of the month to the US, I've highlighted the importance of the multi-sectoral support for Ukraine, and very importantly, the vital support that the Republic of Moldova should get in this period to face the challenges. I've agreed with the American allies to coordinate our measures so that infrastructure, transport, and energy projects support the Ukraine's resistance efforts. Romania has implemented complex measures since the beginning of the conflict. As a result of our efforts, more than half of the total Ukrainian agricultural products exported through solidarity corridors of the EU were transferred through Romania. We have planned broad investments to increase, strengthen transport capacity of Romania so that Ukraine can benefit from the best connections to the European market and international one. These corridors are used both for exporting grain and for providing assistance to Ukraine. The Romanian government's efforts yielded specific results. We've opened new border crosspoints with Ukraine and Republic of Moldova. We've increased the staff at the border. We've invested significantly from the state budget, as well as with the support of the EU in border infrastructure. We've made operational railway with broad tracks as the one in Galați. We've invested in strengthening the capacity of the Constanța harbor, things which undoubtedly you could notice. We've invested in equipment and staff for navigation by night on the Sulina Channel. All our important harbors perform complex financing projects to build harbor infrastructure, storage spaces for grain, or setting up uploading and unloading products. We believe to focus on corridors, to focus on the river and maritime domain, plus the railway transport, where progress is already made. So we will double, in an expedited manner, the transit capacity for Romania for grain and the essential products of Ukraine meant to reach third countries or third markets. What we will be building from today on a road, a railway, maritime infrastructure and energy as well will have a great impact after the conflict is over, when we will rebuild and we would move forward to the Euro-Atlantic accession of the Ukraine. Distinguished guests, Romania is ready to develop a logistic hub necessary to Ukraine. Our doors are open to all international partners that want to come and invest in Ukraine's future. The connections we will build will serve both maritime corridors and road ones in Central and Southeast Europe. Some plans were already undergoing under the aegis of the EU or initiatives of the Three Seas. But now, they will earn in the speed of being implemented. I wish that next year we see each other to see what was done and what perspectives we have for the reconstruction of Ukraine in practical debates on large infrastructure and cooperation projects. Thank you for your presence and your interest, and enjoy your time in Sinai, at the heart of Romania, in a place filled with history at the foot of the Carpathian Mountains. Thank you, Prime Minister. We are sorry that His Excellency couldn't be here with us. We've had him at the Black Sea Balkan Security Forum, and we hope to have him with us at other events as well. Let us now render the pre-recorded message of NIČU, the Prime Minister of Ukraine.
Dear Mr. Prime Minister, Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends, partners, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to open the conference dedicated to the recovery of Ukraine and Romania's role in this process. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the Romanian people, the Romanian government, and personally to Prime Minister Marcel for solidarity and support. Our partnership is broad and comprehensive. We value Romania's financial, sanctions-related, humanitarian and energy assistance. Cooperation in logistics is particularly important. This means providing transport corridors for Ukrainian exports. Currently, 70% of our grain is exported through Romania. In this way, Ukraine continues to act as a guarantor of global food security. Special thanks for supporting Ukraine's integration into the EU. I am confident that we will soon be part of a single family of European nations. We have particular hopes for Romania's participation in the reconstruction of the Ukrainian economy and infrastructure. This is the purpose of the Rebuilding Ukraine platform. Since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion, Ukraine has suffered unprecedented damage. Millions of people have fled abroad or moved within the country. The enemy has destroyed or damaged more than 257,000 objects. These include schools, hospitals, and residential buildings. Potentially 30% of our territory is mined. Targeted enemy attacks have damaged 50% of the electricity grid. Unprecedented acts of ecocide have been committed, including the blowing up the Kakhovska hydroelectric power plant. The shocking figures could go on and on. But what important is that behind each of these figures there are people's lives, their fate and their future. That is why everything that had been destroyed must be restored. Rebuilding Ukraine is our top priority. It is based on the principle of build back better. That means reliability, security, energy efficiency, and inclusiveness. We need to give people a decent quality of life, create conditions for Ukrainians to return from abroad, create growth points for our economy of the future. We have a number of sectoral priorities. The first is energy. This includes our potential for electricity exports, the largest gas storage facilities in Europe, powerful nuclear power sector, and a focus on renewable energy sources. The second priority is the military-industrial complex. Here, we are interested in technology transfer, investment in research and development, and building joint military production facilities with partners. The third priority is agriculture. We are working to increase the share of processing and to maintain our traditional markets. The fourth priority is natural resources. This means not only attracting investments in their development, but also creating a closed cycle from the extraction of raw materials to the final products. The fifth priority is infrastructure and machine building. In the coming years, we will need a lot of construction materials and machinery for agriculture and mine clearance. Finally, the sixth priority is digital technologies. We have everything to develop and export unique digital products. We have gained a lot of experience in cybersecurity, and we have a leading position in the digitalization of public services. In all these areas, we are interested in establishing joint ventures and partnership with our neighbors. I call on the Romanian business community to invest in the Ukrainian economy, as this is a promising way to increase capital and implement ambitious projects. Investment in Ukraine and its reconstruction will contribute to the growth of new globally important export hubs, including the Danube region. This opens up huge prospects for both our countries. It is important that Ukraine and Romania share a common view on this and other issues and are guided by the same values, principles, and pragmatism. This is a truly solid foundation for our partnership. On the 18th of October this year, we held the historic first joint meeting of the governments of Ukraine and Romania in Kyiv. Together with Prime Minister Marcel, we outlined the main areas of our cooperation in the near future and set a number of concrete tasks for the authorities of both countries. We have already seen the first practical results of these agreements. I believe that Ukraine and Romania will always stand by each other in the struggle for freedom, for a just peace, for a better future of Europe and the world. Thank you for your attention. Slava Ukraini!
Mulțumim domnului prim-ministru ca și
Thank you, Prime Minister and Ukrainian officials in the room or that will access us through VTC. I would not like to end before thanking my colleagues in New Strategy Center that have already gotten you used to organizing quality events full with quality content. We invite you that you take part in person or online next year at the Patriot Fest Gala, the first innovation competition on security organized by New Strategy Center 7 years, Balkan Security Forum in Timișoara, and a new edition of Black Sea and Balkan Security Forum in Bucharest. Thank you. All the best. Let me now give the floor to Antonia Colibășanu to take the floor for the next panel, the main challenges of Ukraine's reconstruction in the current context. Thank you and best of luck. Good morning.
Thank you very much for coming, for joining us this morning for such important discussions. And since we have had the opportunities to listen to both prime ministers talking about opportunities, I invite you and our distinguished guests that are on this panel today to discuss the challenges for the Ukrainian reconstruction. Therefore, I invite Mr. Pierre Heilbronn, Special Envoy of the President for Ukraine Relief and Reconstruction from France, Mr. Jean Frely, and Mr. Spiridon Lampridis to join me on the panel. We do have online guests as well, but since we do also have distinguished guests in person, I will join them at the small table to basically start the discussion. We do want to open up the floor for you to be able to ask questions at the very end, so I will be brief in my introduction right after I get to the small table. Thank you. Thank you very much. Is this working? Okay, perfect. So, therefore, we all know that we are currently having challenges in the war field with a major attack yesterday on the cyber infrastructure in Ukraine, basically reminding us that the reconstruction of Ukraine, as we would be thinking about a reconstruction in the post-war era, is not necessarily coming very soon. Therefore, I would like to start with our online guest, Mr. Kubrakov, Deputy Prime Minister, who I hope is able to join us, given everything with the cyber network yesterday. Okay, thank you very much for joining us online, Mr. Kubrakov, Deputy Prime Minister for Reconstruction. Okay, I'm not sure. Do you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. I'm also hearing the translation, I think. Okay, if at all possible for our technical guys to mute the translation so that we can only hear Mr. Kubrakov, that would be excellent, because we have live translation in the room here. Okay, so, Mr. Kubrakov, I'd like to start by asking you, after thanking you for being with us, the obvious question: what do you think about the challenges in restoring and building back better Ukraine, as the Prime Minister has said in his introductory remarks? And how do you see the challenge going forward with having a current kinetic war and having to deal with building up partnerships for Ukraine reconstruction project?
Шановні колеги та партнери, я сподіваюся, що є вже переклад.
On behalf of the Ministry of Development and Territorial Community, thank you, New Strategy Center, for organizing this event. Thank you, Romanian partners, for the event. And thank you, the Romanian people, for supporting Ukrainians at this time of crossroads. The main challenge for Ukraine regarding rebuilding our country and modernizing it, because victory demands a strong economy. The Ukrainian government already tackles this approach. We've set priorities. We focus our efforts on bringing back Ukrainians to their homes, strengthening the economy, developing infrastructure, having a transparent process of reconstruction that is strong, that is efficient. We want that the result of our activity be proper, important. On the 24th of February 2023, we already had the support of hundreds of billions of US dollars, and we've already assessed losses after 1 year into the war. Currently, with the World Bank, with the European Commission, we started to see what we can do to improve the situation today. Our purpose is to ease transport connections, transport corridors, and to cut back on costs regarding logistics in exports from Ukraine and the EU member states. The institution capacities submit their efforts in drawing in investments. Private sector can take part in the public procurement process. We purchase diverse services at the outgoing areas. We work with international financial organizations currently. We redirect some of the support to road corridors. We also use maritime transport pathways, expediting the possibility to cross road borders for our goods. We implement digital tools in this respect to ease export. Easing export is a priority for our economy. That is why we appreciate Romania's strategic role in the process of reconstruction of Ukraine that it has in helping us with the exports. We also want to strengthen the capacity of Danube-based transport from 2.5 billion tons per month to 4 million tons. On the road transport sector, we focus on two priorities. The first is the green corridor through the crossing point Giurgiulești-Galați at the border of Moldova, Ukraine, and Romania. And we rebuild other border crossing points, joint crossing points, and expediting the passage of freight. This will reduce from waiting times and will expedite exports. In the long run, the second project regards export through Krasnoyarsk Upper Vilkov. This is a crossing point crossed only by small vehicles without cargo, and we want to use that crossing point as well. We also focus on Porubne-Siret crossing point because that is where we want to open service hubs for both sides, so for the carriers from both countries. We also focus our attention on Sighetul Marmației and Biserica Albă. These are crossing points that we are not using now, but we want to use so that grain export is possible through those points as well to get them to Constanța and Galați. The Dechivce-Rakovets crossing point is one in our perspective for our commodities. At the beginning of the month of December, 2,500 means of transport have been waiting to cross the border to Romania. Clearly, there's a lot to transport. We need logistics, we need crossing points that can keep up with this high volume of commodities. There is a success case with our partners in Romania. We strengthen Danube transport. In 12 months, our harbors at the Danube have unloaded over 30 million tons of commodity, and we want to up this to 4 million tons per month. The Constanța harbor is not just a very strong transport hub, but also a strategic gateway for our commodities. Once again, developing joint road paths and Constanța harbor makes it more efficient for our experts. And with your help, we build roads, we modernize railways, and we strengthen the capacities of the Danube harbors. We find solutions together. We want to have a joint border that does not divide us, but to bring us together and to bring our peoples. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I am stressing several points that you made. One is the reconstruction is actually happening now with the road and generally with the infrastructure that is being built to connect Ukraine to the world, not only to Europe. You mentioned specifically what joint projects between Romania and Ukraine have been developed during the last year and more. And with that, you also mentioned the funding and the need for discussing funding and support, including security support, for actually making Constanța and the Danube working gateways. That was kind of indirect approach, and I am kind of drawing the conclusion there, also because I want to have on screen the message coming from the US, from Penny Pritzer. I know that it is pre-recorded, so if the technical help can post that so we can start the discussions about how the US, which you also mentioned in your speech, is looking at the reconstruction project here. Okay. Do we have the video? I know we have it, but is it possible to post it on the screen, please?
Hello, and thank you for the chance to speak in front of such a vital conference. I would like to extend my gratitude to Foreign Minister Odăbescu for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to visiting your beautiful country as soon as possible. As you may know, this work as Special Representative is very personal to me. As a Ukrainian American, my heart breaks for the horrific impact of Russia's war of aggression against this beautiful nation. And as I want to assure you, all of you, that the United States will continue to provide Ukraine the support it needs to defend its people, its sovereignty, and its independence. Ukraine's reconstruction is not only crucial for the people of Ukraine, who have shown resilience and determination to secure their democratic future, even in the face of Russia's brutal assaults and abuses, but is also important for the region and the world. Caving to Russia's aggression and accepting its brazen attempts to redraw borders by force tears up the international rulebook that has made all of us more secure. Economic assistance is just as essential to Ukraine's survival as security assistance. And Putin understands this. This is why Russia has made destroying Ukraine's economy central to its strategy, attacking Ukraine's grain exports and energy infrastructure, and reducing Ukraine's tax revenues. As President Biden's special representative for Ukraine's economic recovery, it is my job to work with allies and partners like you here today to help Ukraine become a sustainable, digital, clean, competitive, and European country integrated into global markets. Our partnership is critical, both in the immediate and in the future. Together, we can begin to help Ukraine with her reconstruction. It will increase economic resilience and lay the groundwork for the future. Every investment that bolsters Ukraine's economy and tax base reduces the need for further direct budget support, helps make the case for much-needed regulatory changes in Ukraine, and improves the economic resilience of its people. Our allies and partners around the world are coming together to support Ukraine's recovery. People from across the globe are united in their support of Ukraine, and they share a desire to see Ukraine not only recover, but excel. And we are working with them to deliver real results, from Romania's critical support ensuring Ukrainian grain exports can reach world markets, and its work with the EU and its neighbors to increase shipping capacity, helping to expand market access and increase exports crucial to Ukraine's economic recovery. To our partners, including the EU, Canada, and Japan, who are stepping up in unprecedented ways and who are expected to cover much more than 75% of the much-needed budget support. And all of us are working with Ukraine to further increase its self-sufficiency. As President Biden said, the United States is not doing this alone. More than 50 nations have joined us to ensure that Ukraine has what it needs to defend itself. Our partners are shouldering much of the economic responsibility for supporting Ukraine. Now is the time for us to take action and come together to ensure that Ukraine has the support it needs to not only survive, but to thrive in the future. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak before you all here today, and I look forward to partnering with all of you in the days ahead to set Ukraine on its road to recovery.
Thank you for posting that online, and I take two major messages there. One, the reconstruction is kind of supported as the war continues, with Russia understanding very well that the economics makes Ukraine mighty, and therefore attacking the Ukrainian infrastructure is key to its strategy. And second, the US is not helping Ukraine alone, obviously. Ukraine being a part of Europe, and Europe, the EU in particular, having a lot of effort done to help Ukraine since the war started. Now, with those two thoughts in mind, and considering what Mr. Kubrakov has highlighted in his initial speech, I'd like to go to the French representative, Mr. Helbrun, and invite him to tell us, what do you see as major challenges from the French perspective, but not only maybe, with regards to the reconstruction process as it is being developed, and with regards to the reconstruction process after the kinetic war hopefully ends in Ukraine?
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us here in this beautiful town, allowing to exchange on such critical issue. In fact, President Macron was the first to think that we need focus in a sustainable way. That's why also I was appointed by him now some month ago to try to bring, obviously, with all our partners, a credible plan which ensures both short-term support to Ukraine, but also put that in the longer term, which is obviously a challenge when we see, obviously, Penny Pritzker, who has been appointed afterwards by President Biden, has been very reassuring. we went with Davide to Washington 2 weeks ago also, and I had discussion with her and the American administration, but there is obviously a big question mark on the sustainability of this American support, especially budget support beyond what is currently discussed in the Congress and in a quite painful manner, you can say. What we think is that we have to remain united, and that requires a lot of resolve on the European side, but also on the resolve of continuing to build on a transatlantic partnership, which can be a different manner from what it has been in the last 2 years, with maybe some more division of labor in terms of military versus economic support, but which has to be really sustainable so that our Ukrainian friends know that we are there not only for 6 months, not only for 2 years, but for the long run. And that's one of the important message I want to pass, is the fact that we are committing ourselves in a multi-annual basis. We are committing also to build all what Alexander said very well on the infrastructure space, which we try to support as much as we can. Obviously, the European Union with the 50 billion package will have also the tools to support this plan in Ukraine, but also this plan in countries of the neighborhood, and Romania being the first of it. The second thing is, obviously, we have to think a little bit about the nexus of security and economic support to Ukraine. We can do that in Ukraine, and we are doing with our European and American allies that very much in the country. We do that in Romania, as you know, because with the US, we have the largest number of French soldiers in Romania, assuring also the regional security very much hand in hand with the Romanian government, but also I think in Poland, in training, for example, Ukrainian soldiers there. And discussing also how we can better integrate probably military protection, security and economic development in an integrated manner, for example, in parts of Ukraine which will be completely protected, or as much protected as possible from air attacks, is an important one. Last word, maybe beyond this question of unity, coordination, which is really fundamental, and which I think within the G7, but also beyond, we try to push. The other element, and probably we'll have time to discuss, is also to complement the top-down approach by a process which really rely on entrepreneurs, private sector, but also civil society and municipalities, because it's not a question of only economic sustainability, it's a question of democratic sustainability. And we know from the experience of the 24 months we have now that resistance, obviously resilience, is very much based also on the work municipalities have done, and probably my German colleague will come back to that. Obviously this approach very much betting on also mayors, private companies, entrepreneurs, is a very important element, and civil society are a very important element to make it a long-term commitment which can leverage on other actors than just ministers, prime ministers, presidents, but which is rooted in this very in fact active and lively civil society.
Thank you. So a long-term approach, a holistic approach that goes beyond just supporting the economy, but also supporting the economy while building society, with the spirit of entrepreneurship and the spirit of civil society being supported and taking a net in the economic resilience, socioeconomic resilience, I might add. what do you think? What is the perspective from Germany? And thank you for joining us. I know that you are also organizing a conference in June, an upcoming conference in June about the reconstruction project. So what are the main challenges that are being seen from Berlin?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this conference. And first of all, I would like really to commend your institute and also Romania for having organized this conference, and also for the important leading role Romania is playing in the alliance for supporting Ukraine. Before I took over this new function in heading the task force for organizing next year's Ukraine Recovery Conference, I was heading for 3.5 years the political desk on Ukraine and also on Moldova and on the Black Sea Cooperation. So I really was working very closely with Romania on the different angles. So Romania really plays a key role in the support for Ukraine in the short term, in the medium, and in the long term support for Ukraine. So I think this is really crucial, and this has been already outlined by the introductory remarks in detail. But I think we are really looking forward in also working closely with Romania ahead of the conference, and of course together with our Ukrainian with the Ukrainian co-organizers, because the next year's conference, it's a common conference. It's a Ukrainian-German conference. So it's not only a German conference. So we're doing this together with the Ukrainian government. Let me please underline one very important aspect Pierre already mentioned, which is the strong link between our thoughts on repair, on reconstruction, or maybe when we more in a long-term perspective of recovery and security. I think it is very important that we always in mind that Ukraine is still at war, that there is a fight for survival of Ukraine, and that we still have to deal with a constant and daily attack by the Russian Federation, which aims to destroy Ukraine. So we should not, especially now in this crucial moment, in now loosening our military support for Ukraine. That's why also the German government decided, despite of the budgetary crisis we have in Germany, to double the amount of the military support for Ukraine up to 8 billion euro, because, and that was very clear, stated by the Chancellor in the past days, that we have to continue, despite of our financial constraints internally, the military support for Ukraine. So the biggest challenge is the overlapping of realities, meaning that on one hand we have to assure that the constant attacks by the Russian Federation are in its damage repaired very quickly, so that we have so the repair is part of the defense of Ukraine in the current attack situation. But on the other hand, we already have to make sure that Ukraine's economy is still is strengthened and keeps up working. That's why also Romania's role here for enhancing exports of Ukraine is crucial. But on the other hand, we already think about the long-term recovery of Ukraine, and I think this is also important to do it right now, because not only we have it's not only an intellectual exercise, because it is also a clear sign that we believe in Ukraine's future and also in Ukraine's victory over that aggression. So we have different aspects and spheres of planning and of intellectual exercise to do here, and I would like to share with you some elements we see important in this in this context, also for the next year's conference. So 4 important dimensions we think are worth to be discussed a little bit further. This is also already a result of the discussion we already have with the Ukrainian government. So the first aspect, of course, is the important key role of private capital and investment in Ukraine's recovery process. So in this context, we want to continue the spirit of this year's London Recovery Conference in order to work on the environment and on the conditions for private investment to play a key role in Ukraine's recovery. We also would like to adopt an approach which is very practical, very hands-on, to offer concrete opportunities for businesses to find partners in Ukraine and also to provide and to deliver concrete results. The second dimension we would like to look further is the strong link between Ukraine's coming closer to the European Union, including through reforms and aligning more and more with the European Union and the recovery. So this we think as the first country after Switzerland and the UK being a member of the European Union, we think it's important also in light of the current developments to have a strong emphasis also on the European dimension of recovery. The third aspect we think is important, this has already been mentioned by Pierre, is a strong role of cities and municipalities in Ukraine's recovery. We had a think tank conference beginning of this week in Berlin, where again also the Ukrainian side emphasized of the strong role of the local level in recovery. And last but not least, the fourth dimension we would like to focus on is what we could call the human dimension of recovery, all the human aspects, including the strong role of Ukrainian diaspora abroad for Ukraine's recovery, the role of Ukrainian refugees abroad, how can we create conditions in Ukraine also to strengthen the human capital and the human dimension of the recovery. So these are four elements and 4 areas we think are could play a very important role when we think of Ukraine's recovery. And so this is also something we have in mind when we organize next year's conference.
Thank you. Again, highlighting the long-term aspect again, actually, because on all layers that you have described, we are actually talking about building the socioeconomic resilience. We're not talking about just, building links, but going deeper into society, going to the local level, building democracy, if you will, and helping Ukraine coordinate with European Union in particular, while building its resilience. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank very much Mr. La Cecilia from Italy that I've seen is with us from the very beginning, and also have the challenge to challenge him on the particular question of what do you see as the major challenges in Ukraine reconstruction project, given that Italy has actually taken an active role with regards to a particular region that is of strategic importance, the Odessa region. Obviously, given the cultural links that Italy has there, I'm not very much surprised that it is Italy that has taken the step towards Odessa. So with that in mind, Mr. La Cecilia, could you comment, please, on the challenges that you are seeing from Rome regarding the Ukrainian reconstruction project?
Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I'm very sorry I couldn't join you in Romania. I hope you can hear me, by the way. And I have a strong echo in my audio at the moment, so I don't know whether I understood very well the question, but I will speak about Odessa. First of all, let me talk a bit about Italy's solidarity with Ukraine. Italy continues to stand firmly by Ukraine. We are providing a 360-degree support, military, humanitarian, financial, economic, and our bilateral assistance to Ukraine is without military aid and without our share of EU support already over 2 billion euro. And as you know, next year Italy will have the presidency of the G7, and our intention is to keep Ukraine firmly at the center of the agenda, with a particular emphasis on recovery and reconstruction. And then after Germany, we are going to organize the Ukraine Recovery Conference in 2025. So it will be a long period where we are going to play a central role in the reconstruction. For reconstruction, there are many political challenges. First of all, we believe that Ukraine reconstruction and accession to the EU are parallel tracks which must advance together. We've always been at the forefront of supporting Kiev's European path, and we therefore hope that the European Council will take the right decision on the opening of negotiations in a few days' time. We are also looking forward to coordinating our assistance with Ukraine recovery plan, which will contain a clear vision for the country recovery, reconstruction, and modernization. And Italy strongly supports the Ukraine recovery facility, which has the advantage of guaranteeing a multi-year financing structure with certainty, predictability, accountability of interventions, promoting the European path of Ukraine. And also on this, we hope that European Council will take the right decision. So the first two challenges are not economic challenges, but political ones. And we really wish that at this stage our companies shows unity of intent in its support of Ukraine. We think that a positive decision on the Ukraine recovery facility and the opening of negotiations with Ukraine will be a very strong signal of support. The other challenge we face is for the mobilization of private business. We see a lot of attention at the national and international level from companies, from business. On 26th of April, we organize a successful bilateral conference in Rome with more than 1,000 companies. And by the way, we are planning a business forum in Kyiv in the spring of next year as a follow-up initiative. Italy is the second manufacturer in Europe, can give a real contribution in this direction. We have 4 million SMEs that are learning about the opportunities offered by reconstruction. One of the more frequent questions that we receive is whether reconstruction can start before the end of the conflict. And the answer is very clear. Recovery and reconstruction have already started in Ukraine. There are many things that we can do, such as demining, rehabilitation of liberated areas, support for energy resilience, and also modernization of the regions which are least affected by the war. So the message we send to companies is to look at the many programs and procurements from IFIs and from the Ukrainian government which are already online, and to get ready for this long process of rebuilding the country. In this regard, as you know, as you mentioned, Italy has taken the patronage for the reconstruction of the city of Odessa and the region. The idea is to work with local communities, with the region, with the city, in order to prepare the cathedral and to protect cultural sites, but also something bigger, to prepare the master plan of the city. According to the Build Back Better logic, the master plan will bring important repercussions in terms of further investments in the city and in the region. By the way, we are also working on the master plan of the city of Mykolaiv with an Italian engineering company in a program led by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. And these are very important factors in bringing companies, especially SMEs, to the reconstruction, because we strongly believe that at this stage, companies wanted to participate in the reconstruction need to be accompanied in Ukraine. They need to be accompanied by the governments, by local authorities. They need to move in partnership with Ukrainian and international companies. And so we strongly advocate we are strongly supporting all the initiatives aiming at pairing companies and building alliances. They are very much welcome. The Italian presidency is working also on want to work in 2024 also on investment enablers for attracting companies to Ukraine. Reforms, we believe, are needed to improve the business environment, to increase the absorption capacity of national and local authorities, and to address the social and human aspects of the crisis. We are very much in line with what my German colleague just said. We think that reforms which can improve the governance of the economy, create a level playing field, are essential to attract foreign investment. And we need to increase the capacity of central and local authorities to manage programs and simplify procedures. We also need financial incentives. Italy has prepared new special subsidized finance measure to facilitate the access of Italian companies to reconstruction activities in Ukraine. And we need to complete the work on war insurances to protect companies doing business in Ukraine, their personnel, their logistics. We need also a transparent, modern, consistent system of procurement to be implemented throughout the whole process of reconstruction. To sum up, we must face important political and economic challenges to have a successful reconstruction and overcome important obstacles. Many of them will depend on the donors, will be donor side challenges, and the next few days are crucial, I must say, on both sides of the Atlantic. And for other challenges, the solution will depend on whether we'll be able to involve efficiently the Ukrainian society in the implementation of reconstruction. Our strong allies are the civil society. Civil society is traditionally at the heart of Ukraine's drive for challenge and resilience and should be integrated in the process of reconstruction to boost monitoring, transparency, accountability. And the other lies the local government. The decentralization and amalgamation is the most successful reform adopted in Ukraine in recent times. It has been playing a key role in improving democracy, efficiency, public service delivery, transparency, and It will very much help reconstruction, we believe, in promoting a community bottom-up approach, increasing monitoring of procedure and expenditures, bringing the reconstruction closer to people and their needs. And the Italian G7 presidency, and also with the Ukrainian Recovery Conference in 2025, we are planning to enhance, to work with these two dimensions in order to achieve successful reconstruction. Thank you.
Thank you very much for concluding with those big challenges that we face on the donor side and on the capability of the society to actually cope with the challenges that are internal this time for Ukrainian reconstruction. With that in mind, but also with some practical elements having to do with how we can get companies involved in the process, I'd like to pass the floor to the Greek representative in our panel, Mr. Lampridis. Thank you for joining us, and please do share your thoughts about the challenges that you see, the major ones, regarding the Ukrainian reconstruction project, also considering what Greece has done to help Ukraine so far.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kolibasanu. And first of all, allow me to thank the organizers of this wonderful conference, because everything is going smoothly, and it's very educative for us and for the audience to see the various parameters of this joint effort. Now, let me be, as probably you guessed my thoughts, I'll be very practical, and I will go directly to the ifs, buts, and hows. Now, let me start with the fact that for our side at least, there are two basic elements that would make this whole process much easier, and these are political elements. These are, first of all, the putting in place of really robust security guarantees for Ukraine by the West, and the beginning of negotiations for entering the EU. Why is this very important? Because that will alter completely the international environment concerning the situation in Ukraine. Certainly, admittedly, there is a multi-billion line coming from the international community pledged and already starting being disbursed for Ukraine, but that does not solve all the problems. There are two major issues, and my colleagues already mentioned them. It's a question of preconditions and priorities. Now, on preconditions, what are the main preconditions for the capital to flow in smoothly and the investments to start working even before the cessation of hostilities, as Minister Kubrakov pointed out? This is very important for Ukraine. If we wait for the moment that everything is smooth and then we start rebuilding, probably it will be too late for the Ukrainian society to believe in us, to show the resilience it has already shown, and probably for the expatriates to come back to a society and a country that is livable. So what would be the preconditions? First of all, to have an overall security environment that is stable. There come the security guarantees. Secondly, that there is a clear path for EU accession. There comes the beginning of the EU joining negotiations, starting with the Ukraine. The capital flow to access the country, again, in a smooth way, but in, let's say, a more organized and more transparent way than it used to be before the crisis. As many of the speakers said, and Mrs. Pritzker as well, and Ambassador Frole, we have to see a Ukraine that will be better than the Ukraine that the Russians, by their unacceptable invasion, started destroying. Probably this is a good opportunity to renew a Ukraine to the path of a full Euro-Atlantic integration. I'm not leaving out the part of the other integration in the security structures of NATO. Now, there's another factor that probably we should keep in mind, and being practical and realistic all the time. We are expecting probably some more romantic and naive of us, the private sector, the private capital to come in, roaming out of its goodwill, to sacrifice perhaps a means and take the initiative. Experience has shown us in several cases of countries that come out of armed conflicts and disasters that private capital does not do that. They follow the governmental, international organizations, international strong institutions initiatives. In this case, do we have this prerequisite? Yes, we do. We do have two many very important pillars, which is the European facility, the new regulation that the European Union is currently scrutinizing, and of course the platform of the main donor parties, which will is already managing a great sum of money. And of course there, as Mrs. Pritzker said, the United States are playing a cardinal role. Now, what should our main objectives be? Our main objectives should be, first of all, mobilizing this international capital, finding the ways and the means to reconstruct and modernize Ukraine for a better tomorrow, and of course give the initiative to Ukraine itself. As also Mrs. Henlov and Mr. Frohle said, it's natural that the Ukrainian government, under the Ukrainian Act and priority, and also the 25 oblasts, and the local society, as Mr. Davide de Cecilia said, will have a say. Last week I was actually in Odessa, where Greece is also very interested in contributing, together with Italy and other countries, in rebuilding the area. For us, it's extremely important, first of all, because of geographic proximity, and secondly, because of historic and cultural ties. Probably some of you know that our independence of the modern state that we just completed 2 centuries started actually in Odessa with a plot by some revolutionaries, terrorists of the time, against the Ottoman Empire. Therefore, Odessa for us has a very, very important sentimental and historical dimension, and together with the local authorities, with the mayor that I spoke with the governor, we will already start doing things. Don't forget that also Odessa is a monument, the whole city. The whole city is a monument characterized as such by UNESCO. Of course, that did not stop Mr. Putin and his hooligans to bombard some of the most important historical monuments of the city. That much for civilization. But nevertheless, I saw the people how resilient, how decisive they are to keep going and make the city livable. It's already livable, by the way. Now, for Greece, it's very important to maintain, together with Romania and Bulgaria, this axis, this humanitarian axis, energy axis, commodities axis, from Ukraine, the south of Ukraine, to the Mediterranean Sea, bypassing even the Black Sea, for various reasons. One of them is the Russian Navy, of course, others bottlenecks in the Straits. So it's very, very important to use the hubs in Romania, Bulgaria, and in the northern parts of Greece, something that's already happening for procurement of logistics, for instance, for the armed forces in the region, NATO forces, also for grains, also for energy. Energy is becoming an extremely important factor in this axis, the vertical axis, as we call it, from the Mediterranean, from the Aegean Sea, up to Ukraine and vice versa. Surplus of energy from Ukraine can flow down to the Mediterranean, and from there, with the omnipotent merchant Greek fleet, be distributed around the world, or the other way around. LNG, for instance, it's now being processed in the port of Alexandroupolis, can go up. It's already helped in Bulgaria. It's already helped in Romania and Moldova. It can easily go up to Ukraine. Now, what are the, let's say, partial conditions and partial initiatives that we can undertake in order to help Ukraine practically in these next stages? One is to keep the economy and the society afloat by pumping in the money that it needs for its macroeconomic stability currently. Secondly, with investment, to keep it, reconstruct what has been destroyed already, and the Ukrainians themselves are doing an excellent job in repairing the vast infrastructure that has been destroyed by the Russian attack, as Minister Kubrakov said. And thirdly, in the long run, to start preparing for Ukraine to be a country that would be easily adaptable to EU conditions. That is easy to say, perhaps more difficult to do. I don't want to go into practicalities. My other 2 European Union colleagues mentioned it and implied that there need to be quite a few changes in the Ukrainian society, administration, and transparency terms, let's put it this way, to avoid phenomena that by this influx of enormous capital that is bound to happen in the months and years to come, we will see phenomena that we have seen in the past, probably not in Ukraine, but also in Ukraine, certainly in other countries that have come out of the socialist system, of new oligarchs, people that do not really are interested in helping the country, but mainly their own pockets. So all that is being considered in the European Union framework, in all the countries that participate in this reconstruction initiative. NIČU Greece is, let's say, in the forefront of these things, because this is concerning us directly. We're in the region. We are being pushed from one side from this horrible crisis in the north, and from the other side from the other horrible crisis that is going on in the Middle East. But we're trying to be, let's say, a hub of stability. It's happening. We're very happy that the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, considering other, let's say, revisionist countries that in the past have been a danger in this Mediterranean is greatly being ameliorated lately. It's been improved, realism is coming in place, and we are eager to support and help in that direction of increasing stability in our region. Now, let me cut short because many of the things that I wanted to say have been already said by my illustrious colleagues. I will just repeat actually the phrase that the Prime Minister of Greece said in the morning of the 24th of February 22, the moment the invasion started, and showed immediately the resolute spirit that the Greek people have against this kind of injustice. Greece cannot condone violations of sovereignties, unjustified attacks against sovereign nations, and this kind of total neglect for international law. So Prime Minister Mitsotakis said that morning, we have to be and stand at the right side of history. We are doing that, we will never stop doing that, and we will all together in this. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And considering that we do have some time, I would like to ask the audience if they do have questions. I do have questions, but I don't want to be the one monopolizing this discussion. So therefore, I open the floor to you. If you have questions for our panelists, please raise your hand. I see one hand. Alina has the hand up. A microphone. Oh, you need to go to the microphone over there and speak to it.
Alina Inayev with the German Marshall Fund. I have a question, I think, for the three panelists, and maybe those online as well. One thing which hasn't been mentioned, because we've been talking about challenges, but one thing that have not been mentioned at all is human capital. Because we do want to reconstruct Ukraine, we are talking about reconstructing Ukraine, but we won't be able to do it unless the human capital in Ukraine is there to reconstruct Ukraine. And we all know the issue with the refugees. Ukraine has been depleted of its labor force. We all know the issues of bringing these refugees back. I won't get into details, but maybe the panelists would want to talk about it more. It's not only a matter of numbers, it's also a matter of skills. The skills that are needed to reconstruct Ukraine might not necessarily be the skills which are present there in Ukraine as we speak. So how is the issue of human capital being dealt with in the conferences that are being planned, but also in between the conferences?
Thank you. Who wants to start answering that question? Mr.
Yes,
Fowler?
I'm happy to start, and I can repeat what I have said on the let's say 4 pillars of the planned conference. So indeed, one pillar very important for us and also for the Ukrainian government is of course exactly this topic of the human capital, of the human dimension of recovery, and all aspects which are around. So this concerns the question of Ukrainian diaspora, the question of Ukrainian refugees, how you can create conditions to bring them back. It is about the strong role of civil society and how we can strengthen the role of civil society in recovery. But this also concerns all the areas of reform which are also linked to this topic, like healthcare, like education, like also all the environmental aspects of recovery. It's not only by the way of demining, but also about the huge degree of pollution through the attacks, through the war. So we can see even beyond the pure pollution with mines or explosive devices. We have huge also environmental challenges to deal with. So all these aspects are important factors also to strengthen the the human capital and the human factor of recovery. So that's why our approach is to have a multi-stakeholder approach to and a multi-dimensional approach to recovery, which is not only top-down, but it is also bottom-up. And that's why we think it's important to have this also as an important pillar, for instance, of the conference. But I would also emphasize that it's not about silos. I think the four dimensions I have outlined are all interlinked. So it makes no sense to have just have one box for where you deal with civil society. Civil society plays an important role when we talk about business and private capital. It plays an important role when we talk about reforms. It plays an important role when we talk about cities and communities. So this is also about mainstreaming different aspects, but it is also very important to have a known conceptual area where we focus especially on strengthening human capital.
So Halbrand, do you want to
Yes,
add
maybe
something?
to add to this very comprehensive reply, on things we are discussing, obviously with the Ukrainian government. I was 2 weeks ago discussing that with Prime Minister SHMYHAL and also the Ukrainian president. We have to think first about our policies in the countries which hosted and hosts, sometimes in a very generous way. I think especially of Eastern Central European countries, Germany and others, about what are the right incentives we devise for having this human capital going back and using also sometimes in the best way the remittances linked to the work they are doing in our countries. Obviously it's a difficult debate because in many countries sometimes which were very close to any immigration, the fact that Ukrainian refugees came to their country is considered as an economic asset for their own market. So it's a little bit of mixed feeling in many countries I see, where they say, oh yes, obviously they could come back to Ukraine. That's fundamental to avoid only reconstruction funds being channeled into increased inflation in Ukraine, because it will become a macroeconomic and a very practical issue for any development of the country. But at the same time, they are looking at people who are skilled, who are very much integrated in their workforce, and which are also assets for themselves. When you hear even people in Hungary or in Slovakia, saying that. So the question is, to what extent we are taking that agenda seriously? To what extent, obviously, and we've been doing that in France, hosting students, teachers in France. Can we do that, but at the same time think about how to support people who really go back to Ukraine or could go back to Ukraine? That hinges on a reflection about, obviously, also sometimes higher education institution in France, in Germany, in Greece, and elsewhere, providing also the capacity in Ukraine to follow some of the trainings of the education now Ukrainians get in our countries. So that's one element which I think is very important. The second one is very much linked to what's happening in Ukraine. We have this challenge of part of especially women, children being out of the country in our countries. But we have also the question of how we deal with the human capital, if you want, which has been destroyed. And that's why, for example, mental health has been one of the major priority we put forward. And President Macron committed also to create 100 mental health centers in Ukraine, because obviously these veterans or people who have suffered huge shocks will not be able to integrate again the labor market if this is not taken seriously. So we have to do our job, obviously, in our domestic policies in Europe and in all the countries which host refugees, but we have also to support Ukrainian public policies so that these issues especially are dealt in Ukraine and allow also the integration of these people into the labor market to be part of this reconstruction ambition.
Do you have anything to comment?
Yes, Ms. Kolibachano, I found the question extremely interesting and pertinent. I would find three parameters in this: the human, the economic, and the politico-ideological. The human factor, it's natural, it's human fear, it's human needs. A lot of people, Ukrainian friends were telling me, approximately something like less than 10 million people have left Ukraine during this period. That does not mean that this is a lost human capital for Ukraine. It's human nature. As Mr. Furley said, there are people with small children, women that have left. That does not mean that they're not going to return. The economic factor is the moment that the infrastructure and the investment will be there and the human capital will be needed. The Ukraine's main asset is that it does have the skills, it does have the specialized personnel. Ukraine is a very advanced European nation. That's why I'm fully convinced it belongs in the European Union, because it will be a net contributor to Europe. Therefore, the skills exist. The moment things will come even partially back to normal, these skills will come to the surface and will help, together with the help of the West, make Ukraine blossom again. I'm certain about that. There's no lack of either skills or technological, let's say, possibilities in Ukraine. On the contrary, it's a very advanced country. The third item is what I call political ideological. Probably one of the few but very big gifts that President Putin has given to Ukraine is all of a sudden it made it a very robust and solid nation. I remember visiting Ukraine years ago, and I couldn't tell in Kharkiv, for instance, which at the time was called Kharkovo, by the way, by the majority of the inhabitants, or Lviv, which was called Lvov at the time, what exactly they were feeling. Now it's 100% sure that because of what the Russians have done, there is a very strong, solid and robust nation that is called Ukraine. And that Ukraine is going to survive with its own personnel, with the people that will come back, and will make a better, stronger and bigger Ukraine for the future generations. I'm extremely confident for that.
Thank you. Anyone else has a question to ask our panelists? Sure. Could you go over to that microphone in the back to, thank you.
Good morning to everyone. I'm Igor Prokopchuk,
Bună ziua tuturor, sunt Igor Pavlicek, ambasadorul Ucrainei la București. Mai întâi doresc să mulțumesc.
It's about the main priorities of reconstructing and rebuilding Ukraine. The topic that we deal with relate to the main challenges in the current context, and basically the current context is strongly influenced by this ongoing war and ongoing Russian aggression and the attacks that take place every day and every night. And last night again there was a massive missile attack taking place on Kiev. So when we discuss the topic of attracting the private investment, of course there is this question about risk insurance for the private investment. And I think that it would be of interest to the participants today to hear your views about the instruments that can be offered by international financial institutions or individual governments in terms of securing the investment in the current volatile environment, because absolutely clear that we must not wait until the end of the hostilities, but rather again create conditions for the attraction and of investment right now. Thank you.
Who wants to, do you want to take that?
Yes, I can
Sure.
take that also because I've spent many years in the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which has been very active, obviously, in that space. So there are different levels of action. Beyond what we said, what is quite important, by the way, on business environment reforms, but if we tackle only the risk of war and of destruction, there are several more or less lines of thoughts and in international institutions and bilaterally. At the bilateral maybe level, we've been quite active in that. Also, given the fact that it's taking a little bit of time to find international solutions. So we decided and we announced at the French level that we would guarantee any French investor which up to 95% of its investment going to Ukraine against the risk of war. So now, and it's, I think the highest coverage of any G7 countries and beyond, is saying that 95% of the investment will be totally financed, in fact, by the French taxpayer if there is a missile or drone which is attacking this investment. So that's one thing. There are first projects. I know that Germany has also a pipeline there, and it's one element. I would say it's not covering everything. It's not covering, for example, the transportation of goods which cross, for example, the Romanian border or the Polish border to Ukraine. And there, my former institution, EBRD, has proposed a pilot project which is covering land transportation, which is guaranteed and will be guaranteed by the European Commission, but also by donors, and which will allow to cover more or less trucks, trains, which bring raw materials or goods to a plant in Kharkiv or in Kiev or in Odessa, being ensured that more or less these goods will be covered. And there are a third layer in the World Bank with MIGA, and we are trying more or less, all of us, I think, especially large shareholders of the World Bank, to push for a more risk-taking approach by MIGA, covering also this risk of war in a more extensive way. So you see, it's a very multi-layered approach with a specific and quite difficult issue which is linked to the ships on the Black Sea, where there is an initiative also on the Ukrainian side, which is supported by others, by Lloyd's, and we're looking at how we can contribute there. But obviously the most risky business, because one ship has potentially more value when it's full of grain or than obviously one train. So that's one dimension. The last dimension, which I think we are early days there, it's how we can differentiate the approach of insurers given the different states of protection of the country. It's not the same thing if you insure a plant in the east of Ukraine and if you insure a facility in Lviv. Or it's not the same also to insure a sector like the tech sector, which can move quite easily from one region to another one, and the steel sector, for example. So that's also one issue where still a lot of work has to be done in the next weeks, and probably the Berlin conference will be an important point to take stock on that.
Yes, exactly. Maybe just 2 points to add. Of course, also the German system has been adapted to the war situation, that also now we cover investment in Ukraine despite the risk of war. But that's, as the French system, that's a specific national system. This is my first point. I think one important aspect is also to create instruments, especially for international companies and for Ukrainian companies who have not access to the national systems. So, and this is of course something where some work has been started in London, and one of our goals is to use also the Berlin conference to develop these instruments further, and to maybe have a good exchange on best practices also of different national systems in order to get a better overview. And a second point I wanted to add, of course, the main immediate question is about insurance, meaning risk sharing, so sharing risks between companies and states. But of course, our parallel aim must be to reduce the risk. So, and there we are coming back to the security aspects and thinking, I mean, how we can also create safe havens or secure environments with also the strong link to our military and security assistance. So I think this is also one aspect we should bear in mind.
Well, just a word. I fully share the views of the two speakers, of the two colleagues. I understand that they're in place national systems. What I can say from my experience, going around the corridors of the Commission for the last weeks and talking to everyone that has any even remotest relation with either insurances or other issues of financing, I can tell you that apart from the usual structures of the EIB and the EBRD, the Commission this time, through the Ukraine facility, is looking very seriously at covering an umbrella, let's say, system for countries that probably do not have a national system of insuring their own companies. And but as my two colleagues said, this is a very early stage. The Commission is working hard on it. I understand it's a cardinal question for businesses. But then let me add something a little bit more provocative. Businesses also should understand that when they want to invest money and make a chunk out of the 50 billion euros that are going to be invested there, they also have to take some risks. You don't do business without taking some risks, so they don't expect, I suppose, 100% coverage of all their investments. Thank you.
Thank you. There is still time to take another question with a quick answer if there is anyone that wants to join the club. Please. Oh, two questions. Well, we will listen to both of them, and we will try to answer in a quick manner. So, yep.
I'm a member of Ukrainian Parliament, and my question to the speaker is, do you think and do you see feasible to take frozen Russian assets that we have in many countries? It's frozen, but we cannot use it for reconstruction, we cannot use it for any kind of even coverage, I mean, even for war insurance. So what do you think of the perspectives of extracting these assets, frozen assets, monetizing, and then basically sending it for rebuilding Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you. The second question.
Hello, Lukas Wojdyga. I'm representing the Warsaw Enterprise Institute, the private think tank from Poland. I have a question regarding to all of the panelists. We talk about the donation from countries for reconstruction of Ukraine, but for now the vast majority of all these funds are still the promises. So the question is, what it should happen that all this money becomes the real money for benefits of Ukraine, for starting the tenders, grant competition, and so.
Thank you. So both questions have money at their center. I don't know if there is a quick manner to answer those, but please do try.
So maybe I will be quick on that. First, starting by the second question, I wouldn't say that it's only promises, because we said we would do on macro-financial assistance 18 billion. It has been paid every month, and by the way, the Ukrainian state, the Ukrainian army has been able to function and to perform and to stay on its own feet because of this money. So I think that's also just a reminder. Obviously, the 50 billion on a multi-annual basis will be disbursed in the next years. It will depend on also some reforms which are currently discussed and which will be embedded in the Ukraine plan. And we'll see, by the way, on the American side, what will be the agreement, if any, in the next days or so. On frozen Russian assets, it's obviously a very important source of potential contribution to any settlement and reconstruction effort. Honestly, the issue is mainly in Europe, because 200 billion of the money are in Europe, especially in Belgium, a bit in Luxembourg, in Germany, in France, in commercial banks, so even if it's a minority part. We are looking at all options. Sometimes it's quite easy for some countries which say we can seize everything. In fact, when they don't have, in fact, any of this money on their territory. And there is a discussion at the European level which obviously looks at different options. We, as France, have been very much positive about taking steps there. There are options like seizing windfall profits linked to some institutions where this money has been deposited. Also, to be sure that it will not destabilize also some of the actors, I think about Euroclear, for example, is an important element also, because otherwise we will more or less lose more than win anything. These are, even these first steps are quite significant in terms of revenues, something like 3 billion each year, so over the next 4 years, it's more or less 1/4 or 1/5 of the whole 50 billion, which has been announced by the EU for just the EU. And I would say that the next days are quite important to have this discussion. It has been a first discussion also in the last hours between ministers, and probably, as you know, there is a milestone also with the European Council this week. But we'll see how far we can get, having also the advice of the ECB and others on board, so that also we respect in a way the rule of law, which we try to stick to also as countries which, for the same reason, support Ukraine in its fight, but taking decisive steps in the short term also in that direction.
Mr. Frohlich? You don't want to, you don't have anything to add? Okay. 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 Do you have?
Very briefly, I think that Ms. Harlov put exactly the point where it stands. First of all, on the question of money to be coming in and not promises, money is coming in, otherwise none of this would have been happening. And the armaments, of course, cost enormous amounts of money. Unfortunately, it's not constructive, it's destructive means to use weapons, but at this point it's absolutely necessary. That costs a lot of money. But the money is coming in, and the European facility, the Ukraine facility is there. The 50 billion are going to be dispersed, despite, I'm not hiding under the rug the problems, despite the fact that there are internal cuisine problems at this point in the European Union. There's no question that ultimately the money will be dispersed. Now, on the question of frozen Russian assets, I think Pierre put exactly the point where it stands. European Union is a very legitimate and law-abiding international organization that has to be respected worldwide. If we, let's say, act like pirates, just seizing whatever is convenient for us, and what would look right to do from the outset, concerning that these are Russian assets, would look very differently in other parts of this globe. Don't forget that our point of view of what is happening in Ukraine is not exactly shared 100% in other parts of the world that are very important. South America, Africa, Asia. And those countries also have assets around the European Union. We don't want to see them believing that the European Union is acting arbitrarily in any way. We're going to follow the procedures. Already in Belgium, for instance, that was mentioned as one of the main hubs where this kind of money is being, let's say, deposited at this point, is using the interest of that capital in a very legitimate way to finance Ukraine back, and that is absolutely legitimate. So we are looking indeed, as Pierre said, in many ways of doing this as soon as possible in a very legitimate way that will deprive Russia of any arguments that we are usurping money of hard-working Russian taxpayers. And we all know that this is not true in any case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one word, maybe to sum up and to add just an overall element. Of course, it's I think this has been said. It's a political debate currently undertaken also on the European level, and my personal expectation would be that this political debate evolves also in light of current developments. So it's. There is some movement also here to expect, and maybe also some acceleration of the debate. So, and as Pierre said, very much depends on the upcoming days, but it's a very much process which continues to speed up.
Thank you for that summary. That said, I believe we have done a good job in addressing the high-level challenges, first of all, the long-term challenges for the reconstruction of Ukraine, but also gotten a bit into the very detailed aspects of how do we get capital in investing in Ukraine, and how do we help companies to trust or to actually understand that there is a risk involved into investing into the Ukrainian reconstruction. And we kind of ended on the challenge number one for us, which is political, with regards to getting to an understanding of how do we want to address the frozen assets question. It is an important one for Europe and for the larger West, I would say, including the US. And we have come to basically say that we will finance the Ukrainian reconstruction. And I think that what we have done since the war has started proves that point, that we are financing the Ukrainian reconstruction and that we will stand by Ukraine to build back the better Ukraine after this war and after Russian aggression on Ukraine and on European values, after all. That said, I'd like to thank you and thank our guests that have joined us online. Thank you very much for your thoughts, for sharing those with us, and to invite you to further share them with our participants. We have the business community with us in the room, and I am pretty sure that during the coffee break they will take the opportunity to ask more questions on how do we deal with the challenges coming forward in Ukraine on the reconstruction project. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, and the organizer, in order not to be fired, please stand with me. The organizers, which is Mr. George Scutaru, saying, I should announce that there are two important panels coming up, one in this room on defense industry, led by a top journalist, Radu Tudor, who will come up here in a few minutes, not very few, because we do have a coffee break in between. And in the other room, there is my friend Silviu Nate, who will chair a discussion on the freedom of navigation. Two very important topics to deal with when we are talking about the Ukrainian reconstructions. I might say also part of the challenges that we face, because obviously it is the panel on challenges that is
the trigger for them. So thank you very much, and I hope I'm not getting fired.
Où est-ce que nous allons après? Quel panel?
Je ne sais pas.
Quel est le plus politique peut-être?
Le plus politique.